Hiya, it's me, Dan. Welcome to this new series of videos where we study animation in video games. To kick this off, we're looking at the absolutely wonderful Dustforce for the Xbox 360. First, a quick overview. This new video series will be looking at some of the techniques and skills used in the animation in video game series, whether it helps the aesthetics of the game overall, if it blends with the substance of the game design, looking at some examples of how some animation could be better, and various other discussion pieces while using the history of animation as reference. Okay, I'll quickly blast through this game's premise. Dustforce is a cute little platform puzzler where you play as one of 4 caretakers equipped to clear up leaves and grime throughout a stage. Each character has their own weapon, such as a leaf blower, a broom or some pom-poms, and each have particular advantages, and every character can run up walls and along ceilings, can perform double jumps and air dashes, and super moves. What makes this game such a joy to look at is how brilliantly the characters and their actions are animated, from snappy, quick movements of limbs to baggy, heavy clothing and hair. Let's break this down into manageable sections. We'll be noticing this a lot in the coming episodes, but due to the nature of game design, particularly platform games, the speed at which the character sprite moves along the stage and how their animation represents them running generally won't sync up. If most characters were to move at the pace their animation dictates, we'd get this odd, choppy movement, which doesn't lend itself well to how we prefer to play platform games. It's rare we get to see a character move along at the speed their animation dictates, but most of the time the animation is lovely enough that it doesn't really matter. But here's an example of a run cycle animation not too far away from the movement speed. If we look at the frames here, the feet barely touch the ground for long, and most of the animation frames linger in the air, with 1 or 2 on the legs passing, giving the run cycle a floaty, airy quality. Quite fitting since you're blowing away floaty leaves. The actual animation speed is just right too, with legs moving at a pace you'd expect someone with clothing and equipment to run. There's some nice follow-through action on some characters as well, with hair and equipment bouncing and moving as they run. I particularly like the swipes some characters do as they run over leaves. It's really cute. The golden age of animation, often cited as being from the 1930s through to the 1960s, was the hot pot of animation techniques, where pioneering studios of the industry such as Disney, MGM and Warner Brothers literally wrote the rulebook on how action can be constructed. As we go through this series, we'll keep coming back to something called the 12 principles of animation and how they're used. Right now we're going to look at exaggeration, anticipation, and squashing and stretching, and how it helps the feeling of momentum. In days of old, American animated cartoons were often exaggerated, likely as a means to beautifully distract one's mind to stuff going on in the news. But those principles have stuck throughout all of animation, and right here in Dustforce there's some nice anticipation before the jump occurs. Meaning the character squats before leaping, which is also the squash, and then leaps up into the air, which is the stretch, and it looks really nice and subtle here, especially with the extra dust flourishes that pop out with each bound. Sometimes it's tempting to push exaggeration quite hard, and you end up with something like Ren and Stimpy, and if you dial it back, you end up with something more rigid like Powerpuff Girls. Dustforce applies just enough exaggeration, squashing and stretching to stay in that cute but believable area. The landing is the same as the launch, flowing from a stretch into a squash for the landing, leading into the rest stance. The baggy clothes on Blue probably could have had an opportunity to look more prominent with some follow-through action with the jump, like how Red's hair flows, giving an even greater sense of weight. But honestly, the characters generally appear so small on screen that it wouldn't be too noticeable anyway. Each character has subtle differences with their run too. The older they are, the slower they tend to animate. And just in the difference of character styles, you can see that the animation reflects their personality. So each character has their own attack, so to speak. Blue has a brush, Red has a broom, Pink has pom-poms, and Green has a leaf blower. When a smaller action is performed, such as swiping, the animation is really quick. Almost as soon as the attack button is pressed, your character is mid-swing, to give a real sense of control and response. However, when a bigger attack is performed, you'll notice a lag. This isn't necessarily anything new in gaming, as you can see here in Castlevania. But what this is anticipation in preparation for a big movement, which is usually your character lurching forward to give a stronger, more forceful swipe. This ties nicely into the game design too, as we can't have you wanging about big heavy attacks too quickly, can we? And the way the frames are designed just gives the characters that extra sense of real weight to them, giving them a real sense of presence. These are often my favourite pieces of animation. Dustforce is full of additional pieces of animation which are a result of character movement, such as big swinging arcs and puff clouds that taper and ease as they end, little swipe arcs as you run over leaves, dust discs that emanate from jumps and double jumps, anime-styled mega attacks that practically render the character invisible due to lightning speed movement, a technique used in action sequences in Japanese animation, and even the leaves have their own spinning animation. All of these flourishes have the same thing in common, in that the animation eases really smoothly at the end, giving everything a soft, lingering impression. Some of the enemy animation isn't quite as refined as the main characters, such as big bear-type leaf enemies. There don't appear to be quite as many frames in the walk cycle, and it seems a little bit janky, and the walking can look a little clumsy because of it. Overall, Dustforce's animation gives it a really cute fantasy-styled feel, which is exactly what you need when you play as a caretaker who can run on the ceiling. Thanks for watching, and thanks to my supporters on Patreon for helping me make this video. Stay tuned for more videos studying animation in video games, and why not drop a comment below with some of your favourites. Love you, bye!